The slap echoed through the marble halls of the mansion like thunder rolling across a stormy sky. A billionaire's mother, her once regal face bent in shame, staggered back as her son's wife, adorned in gold bangles and arrogance, glared at her with eyes full of contempt. The mansion in Ikoyi was the kind of place that whispered wealth even in silence. Madame Ronk, the mother of Chief Iamide Adewale, had once been the pride of Lagos society. Her husband had built an empire from oil, real estate, and banking, and though death had taken him years ago, his legacy stood unshaken. She was respected, admired, and envied by women her age. But that was before her son married Tiniola. Tiniola, young, beautiful, sharp-tongued, and unyielding, had turned the mansion into her personal kingdom. And in her kingdom, the Queen Mother had no crown. Instead, she was reduced to the lowest servant. It began subtly, as poison often does. A dismissive word here, a cold stare there. Tiniola would ask her to fetch things, pour water, carry shopping bags when the housemaid stood idly by. Chief Iamide never noticed. His love for his wife was blind, and Tiniola was careful to veil her venom whenever he was home. But when he left for business, trips to Abuja, London, or Dubai, the mother who once commanded respect in every corner of Lagos became little more than a slave in her own house. "Go and wash those plates," Tiniola snapped one afternoon, tossing a greasy bowl onto the counter with a sharp clatter. "You think because you are the mother of the man of this house, you can sit like a queen? No. Here, you will know your place." Madame Ronk's fingers trembled as she reached for the bowl, her aged knuckles stiff from arthritis. She was nearing 70, her back no longer as straight as it once was, her hands no longer steady. But she said nothing. She never did. The humiliation became routine. Laundry piled high, floors to scrub, meals to cook, tasks designed not from necessity but cruelty. The maids looked away, fearful of their mistress's wrath. The security guards bowed their heads in shame, unable to intervene. And still, Madame Ronk endured. Her endurance was not born of weakness, but of a quiet strength. She could have left. She could have moved to one of her other properties, or even to her family house in Ibadan. But she stayed, for her son. She knew Iamide's world was fragile. His marriage, his business partnerships, his public image, all tied tightly together like the lace fabric his wife wore to Sunday service. She would not be the one to unravel it. Yet each night, when she lay alone in her room, her chest heavy with unspoken pain, tears soaked her pillow. She prayed silently, whispered psalms in the dark, asking God for mercy. There was one moment she would never forget. A day that carved itself into her bones like an unhealed scar. It was a Saturday morning, the mansion unusually quiet. Tiniola had summoned her into the courtyard where a pile of dirty clothes lay, dozens of garments, expensive and delicate, belonging to the household. The washing machine was right there, gleaming like new, yet Tiniola sneered as she handed her mother-in-law a bucket of water and bar soap. "You will wash these by hand," she ordered. "I don't trust that machine with my lace. Use your hands. Scrub well. And don't think of leaving until they're spotless." The sun blazed mercilessly overhead. Madame Ronk's frail back bent over the basin, her hands raw and blistered from scrubbing. Sweat drenched her wrapper, her headscarf clung to her skin. The house staff passed by quietly, guilt etched in their faces, but fear sealed their lips. Hours passed. And when she finally dropped one garment into the rinse bowl, Tiniola's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Lazy woman. You call that clean? Do it again." The slap came quick, sharp, unprovoked. Madame Ronk stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the basin. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not give Tiniola the satisfaction of seeing her break. That night, as she lay in bed, she made a vow. She would endure for as long as her son needed. But she would not forget. And she would not forgive. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. And then came the breaking point, the humiliation that would change everything. The day that shattered her silence came during a family gathering. Guests filled the mansion, relatives, friends, business associates. Laughter floated through the air, glasses clinked, and the scent of jollof rice, pepper soup, and grilled fish perfumed the halls. Chief Iamide moved among the guests with his usual charm, shaking hands, laughing deeply, proud of his home and his wife. Madame Ronk sat in the corner, her geli tied neatly, her wrapper simple yet elegant. She smiled faintly at the cousins who came to greet her, the old friends who paid respect. To them, she was still Mama Iamide, the dignified matriarch. But in the kitchen, away from the polished eyes of society, the reality was different. Tiniola stormed in, her voice sharp. You think you can just sit there, eating and laughing, when there's work to be done? Eh? You old woman. Come here. Ronk rose, her bones aching. She followed quietly. Before the astonished eyes of two caterers and a maid, Tiniola shoved a pile of dirty plates toward her. Wash them. All of them. And make sure they shine. I don't want guests finding a single stain. The caterers gasped. One opened her mouth to protest, but the other pinched her arm, warning her to stay silent. No one dared challenge the madam of the house. Ronk swallowed her pride, rolled up her wrapper, and began washing. Soap clung to her hands, water splashed onto her blouse. In the background, she could hear the faint echo of her son's voice, entertaining guests, completely unaware that his own mother stood bent over a sink, treated worse than a servant. That moment seared into her soul. Her chest burned with shame, but deeper still, with a quiet fire. Something inside her shifted. She realized this humiliation was no longer just cruelty, it was war. The cruel routine continued. Days of endless labor, insults, small acts of degradation. At night, when she prayed, her words began to change. They were no longer only pleas for strength, they became prayers for wisdom, for direction. And one night, in that stillness, a thought came to her. If my son cannot see the truth about the woman he married, then I must find a way to open his eyes. And if I cannot fight her with my hands, I will fight with my wisdom. Her plan began to form in secret. She would endure. And when the time was right, she would move. It was late afternoon. The mansion was quiet. Chief Iamide was away on a business trip to London. Tiniola sat in the living room scrolling through her phone, legs crossed, sipping chilled wine. She called out suddenly. Mama Iamide. Ronk hurried from her room, her wrapper hastily tied, her heart beating faster at the sound of that commanding tone. Yes, my daughter, she said softly. Tiniola pointed toward a pile of laundry, bed sheets, towels, and clothes. Take those to the servants' quarters. Wash and iron them. I want everything back by evening. Ronk nodded, though her knees ached and her back screamed for rest. She reached for the pile when suddenly Tiniola sneered. And when you're done, go to the market. Buy me fresh pepper and fish. I'll be making stew tonight. Take Kiki. Don't let the driver waste fuel on you. Ronk froze. Kiki. For a woman of her standing. She had never in her life stepped into a Kiki Napep. But she lowered her eyes and whispered, yes. Hours later, drenched in sweat, her hands red from carrying heavy bags, she stumbled back into the compound. And there, waiting for her at the gate, was Tiniola. "Too slow," she barked. "Do you think food cooks itself? Drop it and start cutting the pepper immediately. Lazy woman." Something inside Ronk cracked. Her breath trembled. Her heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to curse, to slap the arrogance off this woman's face. But she held herself. Her silence, though mistaken for weakness, was now her greatest weapon. That night, she lay awake. She whispered aloud, her voice shaking but firm. "God, give me the strength to endure. But also, give me the wisdom to fight. For this war is no longer for me, it is for my son." Inside Madame Ronk's room, the silence was heavy. She sat by the window, staring out at the lights of Lagos glittering against the dark sky. Her fingers worried the beads of her rosary, but her mind was far from prayer. The cruelty did not stop, it deepened. The next week, Tiniola called a gathering of her friends. Socialites, young wives of politicians and businessmen, women who dressed to impress and laughed loud to hide their insecurities. They lounged in the mansion's parlor, sipping champagne, gossiping, tossing careless insults into the air. "Mama, I am eyed." Tiniola's voice cut through the chatter. The old woman appeared, her back slightly bent, her eyes lowered. "Serve my friends food," Tiniola ordered, waving a dismissive hand. "And make sure you don't spill anything. These plates are imported." As Ronk carried the trays, one of the women gasped in mock surprise. "Ha! Tenny, is this your maid?" Laughter rippled around the room. Tiniola smiled wickedly. "No, oh. That's my husband's mother." The laughter grew sharper, crueler. One woman shook her head. "You're strong, Tenny. If it were me, I could never allow my husband's mother to live in the same house. You're even kind to let her stay." Ronk's hands trembled, but she held steady, placing each glass of champagne on the table without spilling a drop. She felt their eyes burning into her skin, mocking her dignity. Inside, her heart screamed. Later that night, when the women were gone, she wept. Not because of the humiliation, she had endured enough of that, but because she saw how blind her son had become. He had given his life to a woman who tore his mother's soul apart in front of strangers. The next blow came from Iamide himself, unintentionally. He returned from his trip, cheerful, arms full of gifts. Watches, handbags, perfumes for Tiniola. A silk wrapper for his mother. "Mama," he said warmly, kissing her forehead. "I missed you." Her throat tightened. She forced a smile. "Welcome, my son. How was London?" "Busy as always," he laughed. "But Tiniola managed everything here perfectly. She takes such good care of you, doesn't she?" Ronk's chest clenched. Her mouth opened, the truth at the tip of her tongue. But she swallowed it. If she spoke, he would dismiss it. Love had blinded him. And she would not be the one to tear his heart. "Yes," she whispered instead, her voice steady but heavy. "She takes care of everything." Tiniola smirked from across the room, her eyes triumphant. That night, Ronk could not sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling. A dangerous thought crept into her mind. If I die here, he will never know the truth. He will believe she loved me. He will believe she honored me. And her lies will bury me alongside his father. It was then her plan sharpened into resolve. She began her disguise quietly. During the day, she remained obedient, silent, carrying out her humiliating chores. But at night, she prepared. She took one of her old wrappers, faded and torn, tucked it away. She gathered a ragged headscarf from the servants' quarters. She saved small coins secretly given to her by sympathetic maids. And then, on a morning when Tiniola sent her to the market, she lingered in the streets of Lagos. She walked among the beggars near Oberland, blending with them, studying them. The stoop of their shoulders, the outstretched palms, the hollow cries for help. She memorized their rhythm until it became her own. The following week, when the house was quiet and Iamide had traveled again, Madame Ronk slipped out of the mansion before dawn. She wore the faded wrapper she had hidden, tied loosely around her waist. Her head was wrapped in a dull scarf, and on her feet were worn slippers she had taken from the maid's discarded pile. She carried no bag, no jewelry, nothing that marked her as the mother of a billionaire. She walked into the waking streets of Lagos, Aja, Oberland, the buzzing corners where life began before the sun fully rose. Her first attempt was clumsy. Her voice trembled when she whispered, "Please, anything you can give." Her palms, soft from years of luxury, did not look right. But as the hours passed, dust settled on her skin, sweat soaked her wrapper, and she began to blend. Passers-by threw coins, some ignored her completely, some muttered prayers. By afternoon, her dignity had peeled away like skin under the sun. She was no longer Madame Ronk, respected mother of Iamide Adewale. She was a nameless woman in rags, invisible to the world. And yet, in that invisibility, she found her strength. On her second day of disguise, she met Iridi again, the seamstress with the baby. Iridi was walking home from work when she saw Ronk hunched by the roadside. Without hesitation, she stopped. "Mama," she said gently, kneeling to her level. "Have you eaten today?" Ronk shook her head, lowering her eyes. Iridi reached into her nylon bag and pulled out a small loaf of bread and a bottle of water. She placed them in Ronk's hands. "Eat, Mama. Even if it's small, may God give you strength." Ronk's throat tightened. She had received kindness from strangers before, but this was different. There was no pity in Iridi's eyes, only genuine compassion. For the first time in months, tears rolled freely down Ronk's face. She whispered, "God bless you, my daughter." Iridi smiled, adjusted her baby on her back, and walked away, not knowing she had just touched the heart of a billionaire's mother. That night, as Ronk sat on her bed in the mansion, she thought deeply. This is the kind of woman my son needs. Not the proud serpent I live with. A woman who gives even when she has nothing. A woman who honors the old, not humiliates them. Back in the mansion, Tiniola's cruelty escalated. Perhaps she sensed something shifting, or perhaps her hunger for control had grown. She began to punish Ronk openly in front of staff. One evening, she ordered her to kneel in the living room while she scrolled her phone. The maids walked past, their eyes wide with shame, but no one dared speak. "You should thank me," Tiniola sneered. "If not for me, your son would have sent you away. You think this is your house? It is mine now." Ronk bowed her head, but inside, she was no longer broken. She carried a secret, one Tiniola could not imagine, that outside these gates, she had become someone else, someone invisible, someone powerful in her silence. Iamide announced he would host a charity gala in their mansion, a fundraiser for widows and orphans. The irony was bitter. In the same house where his own mother was treated like dirt, he would raise millions for strangers. Tiniola was thrilled. She planned lavishly, determined to impress Lagos society. On the night of the gala, the mansion glittered with lights, guests arriving in Rolls-Royces and Bentleys, women in sequin gowns, men in agbatas woven with gold. Cameras flashed, laughter echoed. Among the crowd of beggars invited for the charity display, hidden behind veils and rags, sat Madame Ronk. She had come in her disguise, unseen, unnoticed by all, including her son. As Iamide made his speech, thanking donors, praising his wife for her kindness, Ronk sat silent, her heart burning. Iridi, the seamstress, had also been invited, her work sponsored by a church group supporting struggling mothers. She entered shyly, her baby on her back, wearing a simple gown she had sewn herself. Tiniola saw her and scoffed. "Why are these poor people always mixed with us? Can't they be kept outside?" During the auction segment of the evening, Iamide called for pledges to support widows. Guests raised hands, pledging millions, their voices loud. Tiniola basked in the applause, whispering sweetly into her husband's ear, "You see how generous your friends are. Lagos respects us." But at that moment, a fragile, wavering voice rose from the back. "Some widows do not need millions. They only need respect." The hall stilled. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled. It was Madame Ronk, still in her beggar's disguise. Her back was straight now, her eyes burning through the veil of dust on her face. Tiniola frowned, snapping her fingers at the guards. "Who let that madwoman speak? Remove her." But before they moved, Iamide raised his hand. His brow furrowed. There was something familiar about that voice. Something that struck a chord in his chest. "Wait," he said firmly. The guards froze. Ronk rose slowly, her wrapper dragging, her bare feet silent against the marble. Each step she took toward the center of the hall was heavy, deliberate. The crowd whispered, cameras shifted, and tension tightened the air. She stopped at the foot of the stage, her eyes locking on her son's. He frowned, confusion flickering. Then, with trembling hands, she untied the faded scarf from her head. Gray hair spilled out. She lowered the veil, revealing her face. Gasps rippled through the hall like a wave. It was her. Madame Ronk. The mother of the billionaire himself. Iamide's jaw dropped. His wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. "Mama," his voice cracked. Tiniola staggered back, her painted lips trembling. "No, no, this is not." But there was no denying it. The woman she had humiliated, slapped, reduced to a servant, had just walked into her gala dressed as a beggar. The silence shattered into murmurs. Guests leaned in, whispering, shocked. Ronk's voice, though weary, carried power. "I have lived in this mansion. I have eaten salt where others eat sugar. I have washed clothes until my hands bled. I have been slapped, insulted, and treated as nothing, in the house my husband built with his blood." Gasps filled the air. Her eyes turned, sharp as knives, toward Tiniola. "And it was by you, the woman my son brought home as wife." Tiniola's face twisted. She tried to laugh, but it cracked. "Don't listen to her. She's old. She's bitter. She's lying." But the hall was no longer hers. For the first time in years, Tiniola's power faltered. Iamide's breath came fast, his chest rising and falling. His world, built on blind love, crumbled in front of his eyes. "Mama," he whispered, stepping forward, tears stinging. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ronk's eyes glistened. "Because I knew you would not believe me. Love had blinded you. So I carried my shame in silence. But God sees, and God reveals." Her words pierced the hall like thunder. Iamide turned, slowly, toward his wife. His voice was low, trembling with fury. "Is it true? Did you do this to my mother?" Tiniola stammered, her words tripping. "No, Iomi, it's not," she's exaggerating, I only asked her to. Answer me. His roar shook the hall. The crowd held its breath. But she could not answer. Her silence was louder than confession. Iamide's eyes filled with tears. He turned back to his mother, his knees buckling as he fell before her. Forgive me, he whispered. Forgive my blindness. Forgive me for not protecting you. Ronk's hand rested gently on his head, her own tears falling. Rise, my son. The shame is not yours. It belongs to the woman who forgot that wealth without respect is nothing. And in that moment, the hall erupted. Tiniola stood frozen, her empire of pride collapsing around her. The same society she sought to impress now looked at her with contempt. Her humiliation was complete. The gala had shifted from glitter to silence. The chandeliers still sparkled, the band still hummed faintly in the corner, but the air was heavy, thick, pressing down on everyone present. Tiniola's mask of arrogance had cracked beyond repair, and all of Lagos society bore witness. She tried to recover, her voice trembling. My husband. Iamide, you know me. You know I would never. But Iamide's hand rose, silencing her. His eyes, once filled with blind devotion, now burned with a mixture of anger and grief. For years, he said slowly, his voice breaking, I thought you were my blessing. But you were the curse I brought into my home. Tiniola gasped, her knees weakening. The guests turned away, some shaking their heads. Her empire of pride collapsed in minutes. Ronk stood tall, though her hands trembled. She had no need to shout, her voice was steady, calm, heavy with truth. There is no wealth without humility. There is no home without respect. You cannot call yourself a wife when you have destroyed the foundation of family. Her words cut sharper than a blade. She turned her gaze to her son, her expression softening. Iamide, remember, the woman who honors your mother will honor your name. The one who despises me will one day despise you. A house built on pride will collapse, but one built on kindness will endure. Iamide's tears fell freely. He held his mother's hands as though anchoring himself to her strength. The crowd parted as Iridi, the seamstress, shifted uncomfortably with her baby. She had not wanted to be seen. But Ronk's eyes found her, and she beckoned her forward. This is what I saw when I was nothing. A woman who gave bread to a beggar without asking her name. A woman who gave from her emptiness. That is the kind of heart wealth cannot corrupt. The hall murmured. Iamide looked at Iridi, truly seeing her for the first time. Tiniola's laugh broke the silence, high-pitched, desperate. This poor girl. This is who you want to replace me with? A tailor from Suralire? But no one laughed with her. The hall was stone cold. Iamide's jaw tightened. Better a tailor who honors my mother than a queen who disgraces her. Tiniola staggered back, her world collapsing. She saw it clearly now, her reign was over. Ronk stepped forward, raising her hand for silence. The hall obeyed. Let this night be a warning, she said, do not measure people by the cars they drive or the houses they live in. Measure them by how they treat the ones they cannot gain from. Wealth fades. Power crumbles. But character will either crown you or bury you. Iamide bowed to his mother once more, his tears falling on her hands. And Tiniola, her pride shattered, stood alone, the queen who had lost her throne in the same house she had tried to own. Madame Ronk's voice lingered, calm and unshakable. Respect is the true crown. And without it, even a queen becomes a beggar. And so, remember, wealth without respect is poverty in disguise. If this story moved you, share it. Let every home hear it. Let no mother live unseen in her son's house again. Thank you for following this story. What lessons do you learn from the story? I will love to read your comments in the comments section. Give this story a thumbs up and please subscribe to this channel if you have not done that. I believe this story might save 1 or 2 people. Don't just watch, share this story with your loved ones. If you want more stories of courage, betrayal, and justice that shakes the ground beneath the powerful, don't just watch. Subscribe now, and let the voices that matter never be silenced.